Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
So I don't understand that, but I digress. Okay, let's go to the 76ers. This is the 76ers exit interview. So if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like, leave a comment down below what you think the Sixers should do this offseason. So for the Sixers, they finished at the 7th seed. They were 45-37 in the Eastern Conference, and they got swept by the Knicks in the second round. Give me one of the pros that came out of this season for the 76ers.
I think one of the bigger ones, Maxey continues to exceed expectations, continues to grow. The dude is just insanely fast when you watch. There's not many guys that blow past someone with his speed, still controlled enough to finish pretty good around the rim. He's a good shooter, and he plays a lot of games. To see Maxey kind of up his level to the point where, as we round out and discuss the Sixers, it's probably his team, and they have to figure out how do we build a Maxey team going forward, because he's become that good that he's like the linchpin of this team going forward.
Yeah, I think one thing you saw in the playoffs is the team still kind of ran around Embiid. That's the way they played. They should not have done that. Maxey needs to be more assertive. I absolutely agree with you. He has been really good, and he's almost, I think, and we'll maybe talk about this a little bit. What we're finding out about him is he's probably more of a two guard than a one, if traditionally, you know what I'm saying? And if you could find someone, I guess, I mentioned this when we were talking about the Lakers, but maybe the Lakers, LeBron wouldn't be bad because he could kind of initiate the offense, and you can let just Maxey go to town and put up 20 to 25 shots a game or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And then you can have a facilitator of the offense. But anyway, I do agree. Maxey was awesome this year. He took another step in the right direction, and I think we got to mention too, VJ Edgecombe. Slam, home run pick. He's, I think, only going to get better. His defense on Brunson was pretty good for a rookie, I felt like. And him this season, just what he was as a rookie, he's, I think a lot better than what we thought. And I think those two together as a backcourt is going to give Sixers a lot of stuff to look forward to in the future.
Yep, VJ was my, second pro. Is he obviously better than we kind of thought? His shooting kind of comes and goes, and that is a little bit of a drawback. But again, for the first year where they got, picking him, put him in there, he fits. This is why they have to kind of build the team with these two guys in mind, because we've talked about it before. It's a smaller backcourt.
Yeah.
Maxey 6 foot, Edgecombe 6'4".
Yeah.
So there's things you're going to have to overcome. And Edgecombe is a fairly good defender, but you can only do so much when you're 6'4", and especially when you get to the playoffs and you get some switches. And we kind of saw that with the Knicks series. But he exceeded expectations playing the whole year, getting better. He had games where that confidence came out. And it kind of ended poorly, but it's a big jump going from college to the pros and playing. What they play 7 in the first round, and then so 11 extra, so 93 games this year. It's a big jump.
Yeah, agreed. Their 3-1 comeback against Boston also has to be a pro for this season. Again, I think most of us had them as a play-in team, probably not getting out of the first round. Not only did they get out of the first round of the playoffs, but they were down 3-1 and they came back and won the series. So that has to be a positive as well going into next season.
Yep.
Any other pros?
Paul George suspension got him out of the tax, and it made him look good in the first round. He got 25 games off, which, as we talked about with LeBron, when you get older, you need time. And he, until the Knicks series, the end of the Knicks series, it looked like those 25 games did him fairly good.
Well, that's what I put. Paul George's trade value is also a pro. I root for Paul George, but like yeah, like he had a really good playoffs. Like you said, the last two games. He had like the first quarter in both games, he played really good, and then it's just his shooting went downhill. But I just think like if you're the Sixers and you watched him play, you're like maybe we can get something for him now in a way where a team can talk themselves into like, okay, you got 1 year and then the expiring year, so we can handle that. So I think that's a positive for the Sixers going forward, especially if they're looking to get off the contract. They might not, but if they're looking, it helps their trade value of Paul George. Anything else?
Um, I mean, Dominic Barlow,
I
like,
have Barlow down too.
yeah,
Yeah.
like some of these guys, Jabari Walker, they kind of Dembona, like they showed up in a way that you're like, all right, these guys can play.
Mhm.
And again, maybe they're not like high impact guys, but like, all right, these could be our 7, 8, 9 guys, and we can kind of count on them. Now, how do we get someone better in front of them to give us, a higher upside?
And to be fair, like they're still pretty young, so like
Yeah.
they could end up being like a legitimate role player in the playoffs moving forward. I'm more like Barlow's very interesting to me. I thought his defense on Brunson was pretty good in the moments he played on Brunson. Like he stayed in front of him. Brunson's going to score on anybody, but he made him working at like 6'9", 6'10" with his length. I think that's a positive thing. So I'm looking forward to him. But you're right. Like you saw enough where you can go forward with them, and then whether you got to get someone in front of them or they progress to something better, that remains to be seen. Okay, let's go to cons. Give me your one of your cons for the 76ers this season.
I just think I know he's pretty much a fan favorite. It's just Embiid in that contract. Like
Do you
it's
know
just
he's 32?
yeah,
He feels
yeah.
like he's 45.
Yeah. It's just he hasn't. It's again. I can't remember who it was. It's quoted often. Like the worst is an aging superstar because
Hmm.
they still think they're a star, but you got to convince them they're not.
Right.
And as we saw in that, he can do it in stretches where you're like, oh, this is what we were talking about when we were talking about Joel Embiid. Those last 3 games, even though he got his knee rolled on, then he's like diving for the ball, and you're like, that's the dude. But he can't do it. I mean, the body's just not going to do it anymore. He's not going to play more than 40 or 50 games in a season. Even if you think he could, you probably don't want him to, because if you're going to be in the playoffs, you're going to need him. But they haven't figured out how to make it a max yard guard offense and fit Embiid in. It's just when he's in there, it just has to revolve around him because of his style, his limitations, and I think that's probably the biggest anchor on this team. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about like Paul George's contract if they can't move it, but at least like, hey, when he's playing, you're like, oh, all right, well, he can shoot, he can play defense still. We can live with that on this team. He's not dictating the offense like Embiid does. I think the way you kind of saw his season end is like that's the anchor to the Sixers.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree. I think that it's good to mention that it wasn't just him injured, but Paul George with his suspension and some injuries. Maxey injured his finger. The three of them only played 17 games together, and they were 7-10 in those 17 games. So obviously, it's a lack of chemistry that leads to this, but it might also not be a great fit. Who knows? Like, but you didn't give that's because it's a small sample size, but that's because of health and the suspension, but then it goes to your Embiid thing, and it's sad that he's 32. I was like, he's only 32 because when you watch him play, you think he's like 38, honestly. Like so, and poor guy's been beat up, and his knees are failing him, and then he gets his face broken in, and all this other the appendix. I mean, we talked about this. It's like everything happens to him at the wrong time, and although we can sports hate a guy, you don't ever want somebody to go through that stuff like as a person. So, anyway. I have a negative being trading McCain for picks. I just and this is probably why Maury got fired. And we talked, I think, I don't remember if it was Luke or you, but we talked about it yesterday, maybe, where it's just like, how do you make a team that you're trying to win now, and you trade a player that could maybe help you win now with his shooting, and he's young, and you don't get anyone that can help you win now, right? Like you get like picks. So I just think I understand there was like money reasons for the move, but it just was not in line with what you were trying to do. And it was kind of a bad trade. You see how McCain's playing in Oklahoma. He's playing really good playoff minutes. So I just think that was a con in the season, getting rid of him for picks.
Yeah, I think they obviously overlooked or didn't see something, and maybe he's not the dynamic player they wanted, but I think he's better than Quentin Grimes. Like there's a role for him on any team, and I think they kind of overlooked it, and I think it made it worse because Daryl Morey said we felt like we sold high on him, and you're like,
Yes.
yeah, well, that those little things come back to bite you when the dude is a flamethrower in the playoffs from three, and OKC's putting him out there for 15 to 20 minutes, no problem, and you're struggling, to fill time on your team in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not even like that I hated that they trade him, because like you can reason with yourself like he probably was worth more than Grimes, and you have VJ and Maxi. So it's like, you understand like money is an issue already. Can we keep this guy around? But it's just like what you traded for him on top of it is just like it's mind blowing for a team like that. Okay, give me another con.
Uh, you were kind of leading into it of the money restrictions. Like they wanted to get out of the tax, and this kind of goes about what we talk about with Morey, like the Paul George, the Joel Embiid contracts, and then that's why you feel like you have to make that trade because you don't think you can pay him or you don't have the salary to pay him, and part of that is ownership, right? If your owner's going to be cheap, it does put constraints on you, but it becomes errors compounding on errors, and then it leads you to make these deals where you're like, I mean, we didn't have to. I would rather sacrifice someone else. But I think that, again, Paul George rehabbed a little, but that's still a lot of money for 2 more years because, newsflash, he's picking up that player option. And it's a constraint that is causing them to further poor decisions.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yep, you're right. And that's what forces their hands to make a trade, like they feel like it forces their hands to make a trade like McCain for picks. That's not going to help your team. I'll just do another con. Being swept by the Knicks, it's not necessarily that you lost to the Knicks. I think everybody would say like, losing to the Knicks second round, if you're the Sixers, that's not it's just like you mentioned the contrast when we were talking about the Lakers. It's like the fight that the Sixers had towards the end was not there, and then the Lakers like almost got it to a game 5. It's just like, man, it was just a bad way to end the season. So it leads to where you're firing your general manager and you're talking about whether you should retain your coach because you get swept in that way. Whereas if you maybe get it to 5, or every game is competitive and you get it swept in 4, but every game's like super competitive, you might not have the fallout you did.
Yep. Yeah, I saw a couple funny tweets like only the Sixers could have the city love them and then 8 days later hate them.
Yeah.
But, they came back from 3-1 against Boston, but you're right too. To go out the way they did, especially those last couple games against the Knicks, where it looked like the Knicks were the Oklahoma City Thunder and
Yeah.
buzzed on. I know Game 4 was a shooting variance, but the defense to that wasn't exactly inspiring.
Right.
Let's make a Game 5 here.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Agreed. Okay. What would you done differently for the Sixers this season?
That's really tough. Like I just think the number one thing is they probably should have just made it a maxi team sooner. And I know they've tried to because Embiid has missed a lot of it, but it's just got to be, Joel, you're fitting in. You're not the dude anymore. And that's a hard thing to do because he's a big, pillar of the Sixers. He is the process. It's what they did it all for. That's what they, bank on. And it's not there. And the rest of the team is like fine, but it just there's only so much you can do.
Yeah. I think the energy and the effort you see from Embiid at times that I'm not like, like diving on the floor you talk about and just you can tell he really wants to win. I do wonder if like the Sixers are in their own heads about it. Maybe he'd be more willing to accommodate to Maxi's style of offense because there is a world where if you center it around Maxi, Embiid could fit in there being a he's got to get inside the arc. I like game 3, like shot a bunch of threes. I'm like, dude, if you take 2 steps in, you shoot like 60% from that spot. Just take 2 steps in. But anyway, I think there could be possible, but that's a good one. I think like Nick Nurse could have changed the way their offense was sooner and be like, Embiid, you're going to fit into this. We have a spot for you, but you're not going to be the main guy. Unless if we need you to be the main guy when we're playing the Celtics and Kata's the only guy they got to go against you. And again, I mean, I'll harp on this, but the mid-season trade, it was clear that they kind of needed another playoff player, another guy who can maybe shoot, spread the floor, whatever. They could have used someone like I go back to Desumu and Kobe White because they were given away for like nothing, and it's like the Sixers could have really used someone like Desumu on the roster in the season, maybe a forward that could have helped like Finney Smith or something like that, but um, they instead got picks that can't help until next year. So yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, let's grade this one. What do you got for their grade?
I gave them 3 stars.
Okay. Okay. I gave them 3.5.
Lakers esque 3 stars.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. I gave them 3.5. The reason why I bumped them up 3.5 is they did a little better than I expected, and I'm going to give them credit for the VJ pick and how he prospered. And I do like some of their young guys. And again, I think they restored Paul George's trade value to a certain extent, in which we'll talk about how maybe they could move him. So let's do that. Let's talk about their offseason. So let's see here. According to Bobby Marks, they do have the 22nd pick in the draft. They also have free agents that is Grimes, Oubre, Drummond, and then a couple team options. And I think that's all. They are about $14 million under the luxury tax, and 14 plus 8 is 22 million under the first apron. They do have their mid-level, their second, and a trade exception of 4 million and veteran minimum, and they do have 3 first-round picks to trade this offseason. So, Clint, what do you do this offseason?
Yep, this is like when you read that, that's where you're like the Sixers have talent, but then you read like the cap situation, and it just makes it tough. And it again, it feels like we're beating a dead horse. At least I do. You just got to adjust the team. It's going to be tough. Like Oubre came out and said like he would love to make more money. Like he's averaged 20 points a game. He's come off the bench. He's a fine player, but he feels like the type of player that's just squeezed out in the new NBA. Like no one is like, let's pay him 15 million. And you're like, well, I feel like we can get 90% of him on a minimum.
Right.
Right. So I kind of feel for him in that regard. He's just going to get squeezed and have to, settle for a small deal. So when you're that, you're only 22 million below the apron. 22 million is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money in the NBA.
No.
And unless you can move George, unless you decide to attach an asset and dump Embiid, I think you're just kind of filling around the margins and just kind of waiting it out for another year.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, obviously, there's going to be somebody out there that maybe you can go after, and you might get them for like 20 million. That people are like, oh man, I can't believe he. There might be someone out there they might be able to get to help structure the roster. But if you think of like Grimes, Oubre, and Drummond, if you're going to lose all 3 of those guys and you only replace them with one, and then you got the mid-level and the veteran minimum. So you got a little bit to play with, but again, is it just going to be like a different form of what the team is already? Like, because so yeah, it's going to be tough. So really the off season is really going to be about, do we, change over to Maxi, but is there a way we can also maybe cut the cord with the two contracts we have? And is that possible?
That's
Okay.
for sure.
Long shot. So let's talk about if that's possible. Long shot. What's your long shot for the 76ers?
So my total long shot is taking one of those first, whatever one it takes, fortunately, and putting it with Embiid and trying to find someone who would take it. I don't care if it's the Kings, if it's the Nets.
That's who I have.
Like you hate to just dump a guy in Sacramento or, the Nets. But I just think if you're going to like pour some gas on the Maxey Edgecombe combo, you're going to have to get rid of that money. And if you got a couple extra picks, ideally, this is not how you want to use them. We've kind of seen that with Denver. They've used them to kind of unload guys, and now you're like, uh-oh. But I think the Sixers are young enough that if you want to like bring in guys to play defense around these two to get some shooting, some more consistency, you could do it with Paul George too. But Paul George has 2 years left.
Yeah.
Embiid has what, 4?
Mm-hmm.
And a 4 in a player option or 3 in a player option. Like if you got to blow a pick on it, a first and a second, I would do it. I know it's ripping the Band-Aid off, and it's hard for these teams to do because of his, status in the franchise. But my long shot is you just got to do it. I don't even care if you're not going to get anything back. Just you got to do it to get out of that money this year by the end of this coming next season.
Yeah, and a team like the Nets is kind of like a good one to go at because like they're just desperate for anything to like make their fans excited. So if you get, like Sharp or Claxton out of the deal, great. But I would attach like if I could get Claxton and attach another pick to it, I would. I would do 2 picks and Embiid or even 3. I would do 3. And I understand like the apprehension of it, but like the difference between the Nuggets and what the Sixers are doing, the Nuggets are doing it to try to build around their anchor, right? Like that's Jokic. Like you said, Embiid's the anchor of this team in more ways than one. And to get off of that, you might need to do something dramatic. So you might have to, and you already are kind of set up where you're not really looking for a bunch of young talent anyway with VJ and Maxey. And the reason why I'm like, not only would I stick with George because of the 2 years he has left and that expires, but also if you're going to have a guy that you're going to put next to Maxey and VJ, he's kind of a perfect 3-and-D guy who can kind of dribble the ball and play make from here. He shot like 38% from 3. He was the highest 3-point percentage shooter in the playoffs. At some point, I should say, at some point, I don't know if that went down. And obviously that could be fresh legs, but he is still a good shooter. My point is, if you're going to move somebody, the long shot has to be to move Embiid. Yeah.
And we talked about it with the Lakers too. If you can ride out Paul George for one more year, and then again, you keep the salary slot open when he's on an expiring to use in a big trade where that team, maybe they're sending you a guy that's not ideal, but better. You got to keep that salary slot open. Embiid's one is tough because you're going to have to ride it out for 2.5 years before you can do that. Whereas George is next year player option. When you get to that last year, there might be some team that needs to get off some money.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing I'll say about George is the perfect team for him because of his 2 years. It's like a team with a lot of young players where the cap is going to come at you in 2 years, right? So like if you're a young team and you're like, hey, we just need like a guy who can shoot threes, play D, take over the offense for like 4 minutes because Paul George in a regular season game is capable of that. And his salary is going to be done by the time we start paying our young guys. That's the type of team George could be valuable for. So just a thought if you're going to trade George. Okay, are we done with the Sixers?
Yeah, it'll just be interesting to see what they bring in for GM. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. With Daryl Morey, and it was funny. We finished our pod last night, and then I think this morning I was listening to a different one, and it's guys who went to the Sloan conference with him, so they're totally biased. They're like, I thought most of his moves were good, and I was like, I pulled up a Reddit page from Sixers fans of all of his moves, and people were going at it. It just, I think it was probably time. I still think he's a fairly good GM. He's done some good drafts, but when you go through people are like carrying water for this dude, but then they'll be the first to like rip apart the Bucks or rip apart the Pacers for like some of these moves. And you're like, I don't know. I pulled up this list. It ain't awesome when it comes to some of these like 4 seconds for George Hill, like some of these like, well, he got something out of the Harden deal. And you're like, yeah. And then he alienated Harden and you had to keep switching your roster over. So I still think he's fine. He's uncovered some guys in the draft, like Paul Reed, Isaiah Joe, but then they never keep these guys.
Right.
McCain, you're like, okay, well, you cool. You found some of these guys. Like you don't turn around and be like John Horst, great find with the 60th pick and Sam Merrill.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah. And
I think it's time.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the thing is like, again, with the McCain trade, it's like, I still don't understand it. So there's some, like with Morey, there's always some good and some bad. And like, I can see like where you're like, you could justify it, but it's all about outcome, right? Like what's the outcome of the decision? So yeah, I can sit there and see, I totally understand why he went for Paul George, right? Totally get it. I think anybody would understand that. The problem is has it worked out? No. And that's the point. It's like you get judged based on your results. And the results is a lot of the stuff that he did do did not work out. Even though we could understand like the James Harden trade for Ben Simmons. I think that was like most of us would say that was a really good trade to get Ben Simmons, that value for Ben Simmons. But what was the results? Did it work out? No, it kind of failed. So yeah. Anyway, okay, totally agree. Okay, you ready to do our next team?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we make this our last team? I'm seeing a trend here. We're going to just do 4 teams at a time from now on. Okay, I really want to talk about Washington, though. Are we good with ending on Washington? Okay, I really want to talk about them. So let's do the Washington Wizards. So real quick, before we move on, I forgot to do this, so it's going to be a weird end. But if you're watching this on YouTube, for the 76ers, like, subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what we got wrong, tell us what we got right, and go to town on us about Daryl Morey. Hold his water strong. Okay, let's go to the Washington. Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.